Okay. Hello,
Deep
man.
breath, Bini.
Deep
You
breath.
give
No,
a
I
deep
needed
breath.
to. It's like my pre-stage, kind of a thing, which I do have like a pre. It's like a pre-webinar. I don't know what you would call it, where like, you know, yeah, it's just a thing that I do. Usually, when the camera's not on, I take a deep breath. If I'm really excited about what I'm about to do, I will even, get up and shake it out in the room, like where just to get myself ready to go. A little excess energy. This morning, I have a little less energy just because I did a long run this morning and suffering the Knicks loss last night, which was
Oof,
brutal.
that's not going to be your good of the week, I imagine.
No, that was not good. I I was up early and I saw the score at halftime. That's how early I was up this morning, and I was like, I'm not going to watch this game. I'm just going to do my normal routine, not watch. And then I had no idea what the score was, and then I get a crying emoji from my 16-year-old son at like 7 o'clock in the morning, and
You
I
know,
didn't have to
you
watch.
know.
I knew they lost. I just didn't know how. When I opened his thing, the other emoji that he had there was a GIF of Reggie Miller doing the choke sign. I'm like,
Sure.
oh no, oh no, how this happened again. So yeah. Anyway, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I was thinking as you were introing here, one of our first guests on this podcast was Jeremy Hazelwood. I don't know if he was at first or second, but Jeremy has a lot of awesome clips on YouTube, and he has on YouTube. He's filmed himself doing his pre-webinar like power
Really?
poses and dance routine. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. So that's
Yeah,
what I
I'll
was
check it out.
picturing as you were doing it. It's great. It's
I
great.
just do it like, yeah, the deep breath, close my eyes, like I try to do like a visualization of what I'm about to do and then start, but I don't usually do it with the camera on, which I did today. So
No,
okay.
he doesn't know. He doesn't either. But he is a hip hop guy, so he's got like a whole dance routine going on. It's quite phenomenal. It's quite
Sorry we didn't
phenomenal.
get to that when he was on, nor did we talk about his moment on the stage. Yeah, okay. Anyway, so my good of the week is this. You with me here?
Bring it on.
Okay, so it's not an organization. It's a follow up on your wild good of the week from a couple of weeks ago by your dad. So I'm up last night. I'm some Modern Family episode, and the version of Peacock that we have has commercials, which is like ridiculous. So I have to pay more than enough commercials. I was like, I pay enough. So I'm sitting there watching. It's really late. I'm tired, and a commercial comes on for Dawn Power Dish Soap. And I just started to laugh out loud because they're talking about cleaning pots and pans. And I'm thinking about the story you told a couple of weeks ago about your dad and the emails and the whole thing. And I didn't laugh like so loud so that everybody heard me, but I was like, I got to that's my good of the week. I just got to share. That's my funny moment of the week. It's such a positive moment. It's the story that keeps on giving. And that is really, in a nutshell, the quickest version of a good of the week that I could share. This thought you would appreciate. Um, there you go. So
I love it. I love it, and my dad will love it too. He is their greatest ambassador to that company right now. It's fantastic. That's fantastic. My good of the week is also pretty quick. It's also a little half baked because I don't have like what the takeaway is, but I know there's one in there. So I would imagine like most parents with kids under the age of 15 or possibly even under the age of 18, we're constantly trying to limit our kids screen time and having them do productive things, et cetera, et cetera. So, and our kids are really good at finding productive things to do with a screen. So it's like they get to win because they're using a screen,
nice.
but they're doing something productive. So in a little bit of a argument with my 11-year-old yesterday, telling him that he's got to do stuff with screens, he comes up with this idea. We have, again, I think this is probably pretty typical of a lot of parents. We have our huge bucket of Legos that most of the time just sits in a closet unused, and he decides. I don't know how he got the idea. I don't know if he searched for the specific idea or was looking in general, but he found a tutorial video on YouTube uh, for how to build with like random pieces, not a set, a actual functioning vending machine out of Lego. So it's miniature. It doesn't actually have cans of soda in there, but like there's the little round pieces of Legos that function as the soda, and there are some like our bucket of Legos is quite large. So we have like even the random pieces. We have like the ones that have the flat tops on them and not the Lego bumps. And those function as like the bills that you're able to slot into a hole that you've created in the Legos. And that triggers some sort of like, you know, Rube Goldberg mechanism that the round thing comes out of the bottom and all of a sudden there's this a can of soda. The video on YouTube, because the guy who's doing it has all the pieces set up and knows exactly what he's looking for and has done it before, it's a 6-minute video. It must have taken my kid, I don't know, about 2 hours to build in terms of looking for the pieces and it is like it's the coolest freaking thing I've ever seen. It's so cool that he just sat down and did this. Again, I was trying to think before we turned on here, like, what is the takeaway? You know, play the hand you're dealt, use the resources you have. You don't need to buy the Lego vending machine set. You don't need to buy the shiny new piece of technology. I don't know. I don't have what it is yet, the main takeaway from this story, but I think there's one in there, and it's a really cool story. And I was proud of my kid, even if he still managed to do screens while not doing screens at the same time. It was felt good. It felt good.
I love it. You have a built-in Mark Rover like sitting in your house. Um, who knew?
Another good of the week. We'll talk about Mark Rober and the engineering set that my other son has from him and the amazing things that he builds. That's another.
You mentioned something. I don't remember what the context was.
It's
Early
it's
on,
awesome.
You talked about like thanking people. I think you talked about it.
Yeah, because he. I mean, the quick story that is he got us bar mitzvah presents from my folks and from a couple of aunts and uncles. That's a subscription service, so he gets a new engineering kit every month or two, and every time he builds a new one, he sends them a new thank. He sends my parents and my sister a new thank you, and it's like they get that joy of giving it to him all over again. That's it continues to be an awesome gift, by the way. So.
I love it. Okay, good. That's our good of the week. So appreciate those things. I thought that was funny, a funny moment, and I appreciate your story about your kid. Another impressive Reuben child doing something from a space of procrastination that is obviously somehow educational and valuable. Okay, may it all be that way. Anyway,
Amen.
So I'll translate amen from the amen. There you go. Okay. So our topic of the week this week is the M+R Benchmark 2025 study. I wanted to discuss it for a couple of weeks, and we had to find the time between guests and other things, and for a whole host of reasons, mainly because I think it makes us look smart when we read studies. But I do think there's a lot of good information and good data in there. It is a study, I think it's 15 or 16 years old, put out by the M+R Strategic Services Company. What can I say? Like, it's a corny, bizarrely written study for the nonprofit sector, but it has a lot of really good data in it from a lot of organizations. This year, I think it was like over 200 organizations participated in the study. It's very comprehensive. It covers a lot of different sectors in the industry: online giving, email marketing, advertising, web traffic, mobile and SMS, retention and recurring, ROIs for fundraising by channel. It's like there's a lot. And perhaps more than anything else, from my standpoint, you mentioned it in a comment, maybe it was yesterday, that it's just too much on some level. And it feels like that's true, but there are very few studies that are what you would call cross sector, the full picture, full spectrum for the industry like this.
Yeah, no, 100%. And the being too much, while that sounds like a detriment, it's really not. It's too much in the context of like we're not going to go over everything in this podcast today, and it's also too much in the sense that I think, and we can get into this a little bit, but like I think everyone in any sector that has any sort of knowledge, there's still blind spots, right? So like there's certain fundraising blind spots that I have of things that I don't know about, don't prioritize. Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't, whatever. And just to give an example, like one of the things that like I don't have a whole lot to say about is social media fundraising and using and getting influencers and TikTok. Like it's not my thing. I don't have a lot of knowledge about it. I just don't have a lot to say about it. I don't know, maybe I have my doubts about it. I'm not even that curious about it until someone makes me curious about it, right? And this study is so comprehensive that there's a whole section on that. So like for me, if I want to say to myself, like, okay, you know, Raimy, you gotta bone up on the places that you have your blind spots, these gaps in your knowledge that you gotta be become more knowledgeable, like this is the first place that I would turn to understand what people are talking about when they're talking about fundraising within social media, things like that. So it's a really, really awesome study.
Yeah, and if you can get past the haiku and the poetry and um the snark, which I like the snark, but like it's just otherwise it's just another dry document with just not, so this gives it a little bit of fun, a little bit of life. And as much as again the haiku is annoying, I was like, oh, I haven't read a haiku in a long time, as if that matters. But the Emily Dickinson poem at the beginning of it I thought was very nice. So
So I have something to say about that also, and then we can actually get into the meat and potatoes of it, because like I did a total 180 on this. I opened this up and I was like, oh my God, it's a 70-page document. And like 20 of the pages don't say anything about fundraising or have any data on them. They're just Emily Dickinson poems. I'm like, can you just like give me the main course? I don't need any of that other stuff. I just want to know the data. And I was like frustrated because I'm like trying to scroll through this document. I didn't print it out. I like have notes on it. I'm just like trying to organize myself, and every three pages, I got to scroll past another poem. I've done a 180 on it. I'm like, you know what? I have to take my own advice, things that I believe are true. Data, as you said, and I think you got it quicker than I did, but like data is dry. And this thing, if it were just data points, would not have a whole lot of personality. And it probably would be really hard to get through. And in the same way that data has a place in fundraising when you're going out and talking to donors, but you can't just throw a bunch of data points at them and expect them to have some emotional reaction and give. You have to dress them up. You have to tell a story with it. I think that's what they did. After my initial frustration, I see what they're trying to do, and I understand it a lot more.
yeah, like I looked at it and thought like if I'm writing this report, how would I write this report? So sometimes when I write, I'm very formal and whatever. But if I have to actually deliver a point, right, or a set of points, or it's going to be a presentation of some variety, then it's going to come with what the personality, like the way the personality presents itself. And so in the case of me, it's sarcasm, it's snark, it's a quick reference or whatever it is. And that's what they're doing here. You just have to, as you said, you have to sort through it a little bit. Like I think one of the pages where I had the list of the key findings, the last of the key findings was some random like fact that had nothing to do with the data. It was just a silly thing that they stuck in. I was like, what 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 is that? But I was like, oh, that's because that's the people from the benchmarks having a little fun with this and sharing a little bit of what I would call personality or tone to the stats and the strategy that they're putting. So it's good. And I think also the other thing which relates to your point is if anyone asks, board member asks about your strategy or some things that you're doing or not doing, say, oh, I read back at the study, a really comprehensive study of 200 plus organizations. And this is what it says about like tech, like, integrating SMS texting into our strategy. Here's the relevant 3 pages, pardon the haiku, and go and read. And I think that's really valuable to the board member, to the team, to the training, to say this is why we're doing what we're doing. And I think that actually can really, really help. So
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure, for sure. So as let me throw out the first question to you, if
yeah,
that's
let's go.
okay. Like as you were reading through it, was there something that jumped out to you as surprising that you weren't expecting to see?
I was actually surprised a little bit by the idea that online revenue ultimately was flat. Really, because you and I we lean heavily towards online, and the work that we do mainly is digital fundraising through online prisms and online platforms. And we see a lot of success with it in organizations that we would think that it's a growing thing. And then it turns out that, oh, like, no, like it exploded with COVID. And then it really hasn't like the upward trajectory post COVID, which I think if you had to ask me, I would have thought that that's where it would be going. That it's not, and that's not you know happening. So that was to me like a large, I won't say a shocker, but it was surprising to me.
Yeah, I definitely hear that. One of the things that I like about this study also is that it's very easy to look at data out of context. And at the same time, it's impossible to put in all of the context, right? That's just not the way it works. I thought they did a good job of describing why 2024 may have had some extenuating circumstances. The big one being it was an election year. So, like, that is going to affect giving. It's going to affect the numbers. And they point it out and they tell you when it's relevant, and they did a good job of that. So, I have some of like those thoughts in my head when it comes to online giving. If there are extenuating circumstances, or just not extenuating circumstances, but I'd say more context to give it, but my surprising fact is, I think, adjacent to it, which is that monthly giving is as prevalent as it is. Like,
Wow.
there's a lot of monthly giving going on. Let me see if I can find the statistic quickly.
1%, I think, was
That's what it was. That's what it was. That's what it was. Just see if we can get the full 31% of all online revenue came from monthly giving. And that, coupled with some of the statistics around, and I was trying to put that into context and understand why. And here's my sort of thinking is that with online giving being flat, monthly giving increasing, donor advised fund increasing, I think that what we're seeing is people trying to be more strategic about who they're giving money to. And so when they have an opportunity to give monthly, that is more of a thoughtful gift than just an impulsive gift of giving a one-time gift. And certainly giving through your donor advised fund is not it's not impulsive, right? It is you are making a decision to take out of your charitable checking account and giving of that fund to a specific organization. I think we're seeing more thoughtful, intentional giving coming from donors. So it's not a bad thing. It could just be a little bit of a shifting landscape. And I don't really know what the ramifications of that are, because I think we're still trying to appeal to people's emotions. I don't think I don't think we're steering away from that and saying, oh, we have to now really appeal to people's intellect and show them our portfolio as if they were investing in a mutual fund. I still don't think that that's the way to go, even if donors are starting to inch in that direction of being more thoughtful about how they're giving. That was sort of the main
yeah.
takeaway that I saw from it.
Yeah, I'll add that. I thought similarly, just a different word. I thought about it more in the context of like a maturation of the whole just industry for online giving, meaning maybe the last 10 years, if you put it in a box, is sort of that initial hype run at certain things, the new shiny, whatever you want to call it, between different social platforms, doing it at all online. And now it's like, okay, let's breathe. The donors are breathing, thinking about it a little bit more. And instead of it being like a shiny new toy, right, like you said, it's more thoughtful. And so people have integrated these tools into their daily being. And so now they, if the rare thing comes along and really just hypes them up and they have to be a part of it, it's just a slower and more normal approach from the donor standpoint. And as a result, I think also the organizational standpoint, that is happening here. And I think that's not a bad thing either. Like, I like the new gimmicks and I'm interested in some of them, and looking at platforms and seeing where, LinkedIn is or TikTok is or whatever that is, or the next tool is super interesting, and to figure out how to do it. But at the same time, it's like, okay, like, people are normalizing monthly giving, normalizing, and that's a good thing. Email is doing what it's doing. That's also a good thing. So, like, to me, those were really, like, your point, I think, is really well taken in appreciating where things are and what's happening, actually happening, not just the data point. Like, okay, those are the data points. What's actually happening? What is that? What are we learning from this? What's it teaching us? What's it telling us? I think that's very much your.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's worth thinking about, this the study doesn't really get into, but it's worth thinking about what's the chicken and what's the egg. So let's take monthly giving for an example as an example. More donors are giving monthly, and that's going up. I would imagine more organizations are also asking thoughtfully for monthly giving donors, right? So, like, are donors following organizations, or are organizations following donors? And I don't know that it really matters what the answer is, because I think the bottom line is that for an organization that, again, let's just use monthly giving as an example. If you're an organization listening to this right now and you haven't invested in a monthly giving program at this point, now you have real food for thought to say there's reason to do it. There's reason to do it because we see that other organizations are doing it and donors are following. But I do wonder if these trends are coming from the organization or coming from the donors. And some you can see, like some I think online giving being flat. I can't imagine there was a major change that organizations undertook over the last year that kept it flat instead of increasing as it has been for the last couple of years. That seems to be a donor-led data point as opposed to an organizational-led data point. But all of these things I think are really worth thinking about and informing your decision making as an organizational leader.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really well said. Yeah, as I said, I think that there's a lot here. So take me to the next one. What else?
Let's see. You mentioned email before, and the way that you phrased it, as you were just is you seem like that it was more of the same. And I think there were some data points around email fundraising that were more of the same. But the one that jumped out to me, I'd say the second most surprising thing to me was that email revenue dropped. And again, I'm looking for the data point. I know this makes fantastic radio for me scrolling through and looking for the data point here.
Yeah.
Um, what I got it here is email revenue dropped 11%. And so I think I don't know what it means. Um, I don't know if that means that we're doing email wrong. I don't know if that means that I don't think it means organizations should invest any less in it. Uh, but I do think that it might mean that we have to change the way that we think about it. We might need to think more about segmentation, and we just need to, I don't know, just adjust either our expectations or our tactics, one of those two. Because if that trend continues, I think that could have a significant impact on the industry.
So I think right. So I that one also was my other surprise. Would say it would be the email piece in terms of email revenue being down. About we talked about this actually with Hazelwood about deliverability and hygiene on the lists. And I think as a lot of these things, as a global point, that a lot of organizations are just doing these things wrong. And by not spending the time on learning how to do them right and practicing those things and experimenting with them, they're just doing what they were doing. And therefore it's going down. So people donors might shift, right? So you'll say donors, let's say as an example, shifting from desktop to mobile, right? Just an example. Your emails on both, but I'm just saying as a concept. So then if you're only designing your site for desktop and it shows up on mobile, like we have a mobile site, it's terrible, right? So I think there's something to be said for appreciating how the tool is being used today, how the technologies around it um, are affecting different kinds of pieces of it, and therefore it's impacting. You're on the same cadence. Here's an example. So you send a monthly. Let's say you're really good. You send a monthly newsletter to all of your subscribers, talking about all the awesome things that you're doing as an organization once a month, and also once a month, right? The other right half, 2 weeks into the month, the 15th of the month, you send a really good donor update. So you're really good, let's say, with your communications, but you haven't shaken out your list in a year. You haven't read what Gmail's doing with emails as they come in. You haven't appreciated that the system that you use for your emails, MailChimp, ConvertKit, whatever you're using, isn't jiving smoothly, right? So it's the same, and you're doing the same thing, but the changes that are happening, even if they're incremental or they're small shifts around the tools, you're not doing. And then you're like, why did revenue drop? I don't know. So I'll give you an example. There's an organization that I know with their newsletter, right? So their newsletter, gets a lot of clicks, a lot of opens, a lot of clicks. But then it's like the clicks seem weird, right? So I'll give you an example. The donate button that was in the click in the email got clicked hundreds of times. They got like 3 donations from the newsletter. So initially you're like, something's wrong. Maybe the newsletter is wrong. Maybe the donation page is bad. Let's change one, figure it out, change the other, figure it out, right? Turns out it was neither of the two. It's the platform that they use right? Their email systems that they're sending to Apple, Gmail, whatever, are pre-screening emails before they come in for spam, right? So technically speaking, this is so like nerd talk, but like we're in the weeds here for a second, right? Technically speaking, that email was already open before the person actually opened it. Yeah. Every click in the email, every link was clicked before the person actually got it in their inbox. So then they get it and then they click it also. So now it's happening twice and three times when it's actually only once, and you're not optimized for the tool. So your numbers dropped, your list is not as good, but actually nothing changed. You're just not appreciating how the tools work. So I think, to me, this is email. We sent email, and therefore email should do what it does. It's like, no, there's a lot going on here in terms of the ecosystem and deliverability and the just everything about it that has changed around you, and you're just not paying attention. And so therefore your revenue drops. People aren't even seeing your emails, let alone clicking and opening.
So, I mean, what you're saying, while it may be extremely nerdy, that doesn't mean that there's not a massive headline here, which is, I think that most people, I could be wrong about this, but I think that most people are still looking at those very basic metrics to understand how their emails are performing, right? They're looking at open rates, they're looking at click rates. And if this major headline is that you can no longer use those to give you any early indication of success, whether you send a good email, that's a very big deal, because those are the main metrics that certainly marketers, and I would imagine many fundraisers, are looking at to see, are the communications that we're sending out, are they effective? Now, the bottom line is always going to be the bottom line. It doesn't matter if you have 100% open rate and 100% click-through rate if you get to that donate page and no one's clicking on it, right? So to me, the important thing, and I really wish the company that does what M+R, I really wish they did this, but I wish they showed multi-year trends, because 2024 could have been weird. Maybe email revenue went down, and in 2025 it's going to shoot back up, because in 2023 it was up, and 2024 was just a weird, and we can figure out why, and we'll explain that away. I didn't go back to see what it was in 2023, but are we seeing this decline year after year, or are organizations doing something differently than they did in 2023? Like, I to me, it feels quite nature that email revenue is down, and it could be for any of the reasons that you mentioned. But it's, I don't know. I think a lot of organizations have that as a main fundraising tool, and it's, again, it's worth exploring. I'm not giving blanket advice to say don't use email to fundraise anymore, but it's really worth putting that under the microscope and saying, what are we actually seeing, and what are the trends moving forward?
So I did a little bit of that homework because I was like, okay, this is the 2025. What did they say, you know, the prior years in terms of recommendations, or what did the data say? And so I look back, the 2022 survey, in the study, they said they should expect online giving to decline, right? Because of the explosive growth in pandemic times over the course of Corona, that was the anomaly and that was a massive spike.
Wait,
Okay.
so let me just repeat back to make sure I get it. So you're saying that previously, during the pandemic, online fundraising increased dramatically, or email fundraising increased dramatically. So now we're sort of seeing a regression to the mean from pre-pandemic times.
Yeah. And
Okay,
so,
fine.
if you're like just assuming that 2021, 2022 is the norm, and your 2023, 2024 dropped, let's say, like, you should have expected that, let's say, on some level, right? At the same time, didn't mean you should just allow that to be the case, but they got that one right, right? So, um, and if you didn't diversify or look for other opportunities other than online or whatever it is, you lost, right? And so, like, I think so that's why I looked it back, because I was like, I don't even know if this is like worthwhile as a point. But they said the same thing about monthly giving in 2022 also. They said people should lean into monthly giving because of the long-term stability that's better for your organization. That was a 2022 prediction. In 2023, 2024, it grew 22% to 28%, now to 31%. Again, they were prophetic in how they sort of got that right. So I think, to me, it's like a lot of organizations just do what they do, and they don't improve, or they don't go back to things that did work and figure out how they could work better. Again, when Hazel was on, Jeremy was on, we talked about, data list hygiene, and even purging the list to some degree, and or pressure testing, and checking the data to make sure that people are still alive on that email list, right? And maybe email has to shift, or how you use it has to change. So it's still deliverable, it still gets there, but maybe you're pulling out most of the links and you're just putting in one link, or you are putting in an image one time and not the next time. And so you're rejiggering how you look at something, the same tool. It's just that you're using the tool better than you did before. And then surprise, surprise, your, your stats will go back up, right?
Yeah,
That goes to deliverability. It goes to a whole host of things, even if, again, the road is the same road, but you're cleaning up the road, you're getting rid of the potholes, you're avoiding the traffic lights, and you're all the other things that are stopping you to get you the result that you want.
yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, the data points in it of themselves are interesting and less important to me than what the trends are. And I feel like that's really, and the way that you put that not only do we have to look at a 2-year trend or a 3-year trend, but given how the world has turned upside down 3 different times in the last 5 years, 6 years, we have to actually look at real multi-year trends, that if we're sort of coming back down to a baseline level of what giving looked like in 2019, then there's solace in that. That's okay, right? If it keeps going down after we've hit that baseline, then there's a problem there. Or not necessarily a problem, just a shift, right? Then we're starting to pay attention to different things and starting to invest in other things. But it's the multi-year trends, and I think that could be a good project just for me to look at, is put some of these data points from these studies over the last couple of years on one chart to see what it was in 2019 all the way through 2024, and see what those numbers look like.
Yeah, I'll give you another one just as an example. So if you just take a stat from the survey and you see social media engagement is up, right? Overall, that's great. But if you're on the wrong platform, it doesn't mean anything. Or if you're on a platform that has engagement but it's not a revenue generator, then great. We have a lot more people who connect to our organization because we're on TikTok, and everything on TikTok is everyone's watching and whatever. Like, that's great. It's not converting. It's not a converting platform. So overall, on the dollar side of it, let's say engagement's up, but dollars are down because Facebook has been the king, and Facebook, let's say from an audience standpoint, trends older, so engagement might be down. And so the newer platforms are for the younger, and they're getting younger and younger and younger. So then you have to figure out, where does social fit into your schedule as a thing, because maybe we can't predict what it's going to mean. We can't show the value for all those views on a YouTube channel, right? So I think that that's a lot of the things that I think we have to think about when we look at any of these things that are going on in a study like this. And yes, taking 5 years, let's say, I think probably the right way to do this would be to take 2018 to 2025, put all this stuff out there on the data for the last 7 years, or 6 years, because you're in 2025 now, and look at how those things trended up, trended down, not just percentages, but actual dollars, or actual views and clicks, whatever that is. So you have the number, actual number, and the percentage numbers, and to see how those things are predictably going up or going down. And then you look at the tools and say, okay, this is a tool we need to lean in on. This is a tool we need to lean away from. This is how we have to figure out how to, really max out our website and the conversion on our website, right? One of the examples you mentioned. So now that you know that monthly giving is up 31% of online, is it the default on your donate page? It probably should be, right? Or you should at least have that, the pop up that says, hey, you just decided to give a gift for the first time. Thank you so much. A one time gift. Would you consider becoming a monthly donor instead? Right? That should be a given basically at this point, because so much money is going to monthly giving, right? That has to be how you think about it. And if you're not thinking about it, or you decide not to, fine. But that's how you should probably be thinking.
Yeah. And they did have that data point on there. Was able to find this one quickly. Is 64% of organizations have pre-selected one-time giving on their donate forms. So
Right. But
it's
the trend is 23 to 28 to 31% of the online is monthly. You probably
yes,
should, for a period of time, consider, doing something that highlights monthly. Either you start a
absolutely,
monthly giving program because that's the trend, or minimally, when person comes to your page, you're optimizing your page for monthly giving as opposed to one time.
absolutely, absolutely,
So when you're not
absolutely.
doing that, right, and the conversion rates for one time for people coming to a website and clicking to a website, and the conversion rate is down for people coming to your site in terms of coming to your site, clicking and donating, that number was down. Like, optimize for what's going to get you the most money. The most money is not going to be that one-time gift. It's probably going to be the long-term, over month to month, right? So set the play. I tell this to people all the time. If you can write the screenplay here and how it moves from scene to scene, and you can move a person from scene to scene along your path, so get the outcome you want. The outcome you want is the person to become a longer term sustainable donor, and that's not through a one-time gift, that's through a monthly gift. And so set up that play to go, right into there. And you can do that from the beginning.
You get what you ask for, and if you don't ask for it, you're not going to get it. So
Yeah. So those are like the biggest points, I think, from this. There's a lot. As you said, there's too much in there for any one conversation to cover. And I think even just talking here, when we talk about online giving and email as examples of those channels that are, surprising or not surprising, whatever they are, I think that's really super valuable. Anything else?
I think that's all I got. I mean, I got more, but we'll cap it here.
Well, I'm going to ask you to pull up one more. I'm going to share one more because we're going to raise it with a guest that we have in a few weeks. The donor advised fund piece is such a small component, like surprisingly small in terms of what the numbers showed. It was like 1%, right? Or what a percentage of dollars I saw it. And I was like, okay, that to me is, whatever. But to me, like, that's going to be, I think that's the fastest growing from a dollar per transaction kind of thing. I think that's going to be the fastest growing one. You'll see in the 2026 study what happens with DAFs, because the way the DAF movement is happening, it's almost as normal. It's going to be as normal as clicking and paying through PayPal, Google Pay, Apple Pay is going to be your DAF, and people are going to have DAFs, many more people. And so I think you'll see the movement in that direction, and that number I think is going to be dramatically higher. And I'm looking forward to having the chance to ask him about it in a few weeks when he's on the podcast. I will not say his name, just to leave that out there as a surprise. Who's the guy who's going to talk about DAFs with us in, I think, 3 or 4 weeks time. But that one to me was like such an interesting little point. Anyway, that was one.
That's a good one. I definitely have a lot to say about DAFs. I think you and I are pretty much in alignment there. And that's another thing. I guess the only thing I'll say is that's another really good example of the chicken and egg. Like, we're seeing donor behavior change and we're seeing organizational behavior change. It's hard to know which one is pushing the other, but again, it doesn't matter because the organizations need to change either way, and we need to be able to offer donors the ability to give through their donor advised funds. So that's just the bottom line there.
Absolutely.
The last thing that the last one that I guess I'll bring up, because I feel like it's an easy one to ignore, is that volunteer turnout increased both in person and online. Uh, there's just the way the world is going and being so digital, and we're talking about email and online fundraising and giving people the ability to give online through their donor advised funds, like that in person, that human to human connection is still real. people
Yes.
feel when people feel purpose, they show up. And so it's an easy thing to ignore for organizational leaders, for fundraisers. But like, I've heard you say this before also, I guess I'm parroting you a little bit, but like, get people in your building, get people together, just get people together. It just makes a huge difference in building community. And you can have the ulterior motive of, once they feel a part of that community, they're going to give more, right? Like, you can, that is okay for you to have that ulterior motive, but that's what you're trying to do, is build these relationships, and you do that by bringing people together in person. It can happen online, but in person is just where it happens most fruitfully.
Yeah, I saw that number in the study on volunteers. There was one particular sector which I think really outshined in terms of volunteer engagement, and others were much lower. But I still think that's a great way to get people to move people through your system to become sustaining long-term supporters and champions of your cause is by getting them in the door physically and then moving them along the process. It's not a natural that a volunteer becomes a donor, but it is something that can and should happen. And I think if you get person physically into the building, into the space, cleaning, painting, picking vegetables, whatever it is, serving that meal, you're going to get them. It's going to happen. It's just a question of how long it takes you to get them to move from one type of relationship to the next type of relationship or deeper relationship with your organization. But I saw that number on volunteering. I think that's a really interesting point. And as we mentioned a couple of times already this year, I think there's a trend there that has to be really pushed at, which is the in-person physical spaces with other people.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So that is our little version of looking at this study. I will link to it in the show notes for this week. If you're in the sector, whether you're a board member, an executive, an employee, an organization, fundraiser, definitely take a look at it. There's a lot to ponder. There's a lot to pour over. There's way more than we talked about in just 40 minutes or so here today in there. And for sure, there's at least a nugget or two or three for every single organization out there. And so recommend looking through it, reading through it. And as always, get back to us with your comments and your questions about it. Happy to talk about it more. That's it for today. All right, take care.